as I said, I'm repeating myself. We are short for time, always, because we want to maximize the time here at the ITB Berlin Convention 2025. Here, we're now at the e-travel track. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it, because I know there's so much going on. So that's such a huge compliment to us, because I'm always feeling like spoiled for choices when I see programs like that, right? And then also you have all these industry peers out there that you could connect with. So thank you so much for that. And thank you also to our track sponsor today here is checkout.com. Checkout.com, after the next session, they will have a panel together with Get Your Guide and MasterCard, where they dive into what's happening in the space of travel payments. Might sound trivial, but there's so much happening. I can just encourage you to stay later on and check this out. It's a very interesting session. But now, let's shift gears a bit. And I'm very excited, as I myself, I don't consider myself an aviation or airline expert, but it's always so fascinating to talk to those peers from that sector. And the next session is all about airline commercial strategies. And I know a very good expert in that industry that told me there is an airline commercial strategy revolution happening. So let's hear all about this. I hand over to Boris Padovan from Travel in Motion, and he will come on stage and he will host a wonderful panel for you guys. So enjoy the next 25 minutes. Thank you, Boris.
Thank you, Leah. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Boris Padovan, but I'm not the only one. I have 3 colleagues, friends, partners here who will join me for this panel. If you could please come up first, Steffi, please. Jorge and Brian. Please take a seat. So what are we discussing today? We are talking about airline commercial distribution, revolution, evolution. Because from what we have seen over the past 40, maybe even 50 years, is that the way airlines sell their content, their flights, their ancillaries, if they sold any ancillaries, hasn't actually changed. It has always been, to a certain extent, the same, very much based around a trip, but not around a passenger. What we are experiencing today, maybe really post-COVID, becoming faster and faster, is that airlines are trying to become retailers. And everybody talks about an airline being like an Amazon, really with a pure retailing approach, with the passenger, with the customer in focus. But it's very hard to get there. And therefore, I'm very happy that I can further discuss this subject with my 3 colleagues, who I would kindly ask to give a very quick intro, please.
Yeah, my name is Stephanie. Wasserfuhr, I'm with Peakwork. We are the hub player technology in leisure travel, but my background is like 20 years in the airline industry, so I can give you a good overview.
I'm Jorge Diaz, CEO and founder of Gateway, one of new players in this space in the airline distribution new model, let's say, which the airlines have empowered.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Wyszynski. I lead Partner and Alliances programs for Pros Travel. We provide offer and order management solutions to the airline space.
Thank you. Wonderful. Steffi, let's start with you. Steffi, during your career, you have spent quite some time with airlines, mainly with Lufthansa Group, if I'm not mistaken. Where do you see the big change going? How are airlines coping with the big change when it comes to commercial strategies to airline distribution?
Exactly. I mean, it's been, I think, 2012 when IATA launched their data standard NDC. And I think as of now, from all, let's say, about 700 airlines, there are about 77 who achieved the highest NDC standard. So giving that 13 years, it takes really time for airlines to adopt. I think everybody sees the huge potential, and even with one order, I'm sure Brian will elaborate on that. However, it is not easy to change the complete structure of your airline just by day one, and I think every airline had to adopt that given the new standard, and if you want to plug in a lot of APIs, that's also needs to be changed in your IT department. There need to be changes in your sales team because you need people who know about distribution all of a sudden. So that there's a lot to cope with. However, the potential is enormously. on the other side, everybody agrees that aggregation is also a great thing to have. So the only reason why everybody goes that path is cost cutting. So, but you have to invest on the other side. So it is really a difficult game, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. And no conversation about airline commercial strategies without mentioning NDC. Not sure how familiar the audience is with NDC. That stands for New Distribution Capability, and actually enables the airline to better sell through the indirect channel, through the channel of travel agencies. Traditionally, airlines, when they were not selling directly via web, mobile app, or call center, they sold through global distribution systems, Amadeus, Travelport, Sabre, and so on, which was kind of a sell, but it was also, to a certain extent, completely outsourcing the sales process de facto to those distribution, global distribution systems, GDS, which had some very interesting experience, was a huge cost factor for the airlines, but also very often the airline wasn't able to actually customize an offer for the specific passenger, because only the travel agent knew who was sitting in front of the desk, the airline did not. Now with NDC, which is to a certain extent only a technical protocol, even when you go through content aggregation, the airline knows very early in the process who the passenger is, or can segment the passenger, has criteria about the passenger, because the airline is now responsible for creating the offer to the passenger, something that has been done traditionally by the global distribution systems. And this describes a very big change in the commercial landscape of how airlines sell. And Steffi, you quite correctly said, and I don't want to sound like a teacher, please forgive me, the distribution landscape is changing. The classical intermediation from legacy aggregators like Travelport, Amadeus, Sabre is going away, and new aggregators, NDC-based from a technological perspective, for instance, are coming to the market, because there is always the need for content aggregation. And with Jorge, I think we have one very good, luckily also very successful example of new content aggregation. Jorge, how big is your chance? Where do you see the big changes here with disintermediation of classical distribution channels, but still having the need to aggregate?
Well, of course, there's an opportunity created by the airlines in terms of demonopolization of the distribution industry. That's something that they've set the airlines themselves. Yeah, as one of the participants in this race, of course, there's a big opportunity. It's a very, very big industry, settled on yeah, as you said, 3-4 players if we include the Chinese one. So the opportunity is big. There's many hurdles, of course, in the path. Of course, starting with the fact that each airline that writes their own path in many ways, technically, even the moment when they start their direct distribution initiative. But yeah, so far, yeah, I think we're in a sweet spot for all those who bet on NDC several years ago, and I think we're on that. Luckily, we're in the group.
So that's interesting to hear, because hand in hand with the new way how airlines distribute, and I mentioned this earlier, comes the shift of airliners to become real retailers. So how does a retailer work? Let's think about Amazon.com. You create an offer, you have an order, you need to deliver the order, and you need to account for this. And when I shop on Amazon.com, I very often get personalized offers based on my profile or on the segment I'm in, and that's also something we are seeing now with airlines. With Brian Wyszlinski from Pros, you're one of the leading suppliers here, having a long footprint in the airline industry. Pros is actually probably the front runner and the most prominent revenue management system in the market. Brian, what is, from an IT supplier perspective, the answer, the contribution to the airline industry when it comes to this commercial revolution?
Thanks for the plug for Pros, Boris. I really appreciate that.
I'll have my beer later. Yeah. So,
it's in my view, it's really about changing the conversation that the airlines have with the customer, and it's removing the intermediaries from the step. And with the airlines having so much data about their customer base, it's being able to know what to offer them. So the gentleman that spoke before talked about using AI and using information to be able to proactively recommend products and services. And really what the airlines want to do is be able to provide that offer, optimize that offer, and be able to price that offer. That's the first step in all of this. And then it's being able to manage all the systems that it takes to sell that offer, deliver, and settle it. So that's really the evolution that we're going through now.
So, and we as Travel in Motion, when we help airlines, there is an IT perspective to things because airlines are still very often on very legacy systems. There's also an organizational perspective. But maybe over to you, Steffi, again, with your experiences, Lufthansa, I think Eurowings as well, where you have seen two somehow different airlines or different business models supported by the airline. Everything we are discussing here sounds great, beautiful. You get personalized offer. The airline early recognizes you in the process. They make relevant proposals to you. Too good to be true. So why do airlines struggle? Why does it take so long? What are the biggest hurdles?
I mean, airlines were the ones founding GDSs because for one reason, because you plug in and then you're distributed worldwide. Now, with the new distribution capabilities, you actually want to have the same, but on the same side, your commercials is struggling. So that's a big challenge. And now you set up an organization to kind of organize single APIs, which is like an interface for your NDC. And that is what I said in the beginning. It's challenging for your organization. So you have to find your way here. I think all of now, 77 airlines managed, so there is a way. But still, you actually want to have an aggregator because it puts data on a standard. Let's put it that way. When Peacock connected the first airline on NDC, I think they used version 15, and nowadays we are on, I think the last was 32, so that kind of is now a standard, but it was just a data format and everybody could interpret it in a different way. So that is really, really challenging. And of course, it should be very individual, as Brian said, because everybody wants to offer a personalized airline product, but it's very, very challenging.
Interesting, but Jorge, Brian, is it only an IT problem?
Of course not. There's big changes behind, of course, not only technology, operational changes as well. The airlines are, let's say, fully automating all the servicing processes, which brings, I think, advantages for the sellers as well, facilitation for the sellers. And there's, of course, a big shift in the commercials. Once the airlines say, okay, this model is not monopolistic anymore, you have the chance to choose, you will have to pay your choice. So it's shifting the cost from the airline side to the seller or the traveler side.
Brian, you're raising your hand. So,
yeah, no, Jorge, I agree with that. And if you look at the airlines out there, everyone's going to move at a different pace. And I think that we're going to be living in a hybrid world for a very long time. Boris, you mentioned in NDC, and Steffi, you mentioned that it kicked off in 2011, 2012. It took about 12 years for it to get some receptiveness, and now everybody's implementing it. With this new modern airline retailing philosophy, it's a bigger concept than just what NDC is. So it's going to be 10, 15, 20 years, and it's the ecosystem, not only within what you're selling, but it's also the ecosystem of IT solutions within the airline that need to change and accommodate for this new way of selling.
yeah, and I think it's really not only an IT problem or an IT challenge, it's a completely organizational challenge of the airline itself. Because most of the airlines we work with, they're pretty much organized in silos. So you have the revenue management guys. They usually think that they are the most clever ones in the airline because they have all these fancy formulas. They all have a PhD in mathematics at least. You have the customer service guys. You have the ops guys that need to make sure that you have on-time performance on all these things. This is a very traditional view on how airlines are operated. if you now, because you can, with new technology, put the passenger in front, optimize everything around the passenger experience. All these different departments have to work together, they have to interchange, and probably the traditional setup, as we've seen it in the airline, will not further exist, and it will be replaced by new setups. And just think about the big airline conglomerates you have with Lufthansa Group, IAG, Air France, KLM. This will take quite some time. Which brings me somehow to the last round of our questions already. When I joined the industry, and no indication how old I am, but it's more than 20 years ago, we were talking about the same stuff, by the way, to a certain extent, that everything needs to change, and we are still around, and it hasn't fully changed. But the big topic at this point in time was we have to remove the paper ticket to an e-ticket. Which was not a big change, because in essence, you supported the same business process and you just replaced the paper by a document, by an electronic document. It took how long? 10 years? I don't know, 8 years?
I think it's more, if you go to Google Images and you search for transition e-ticket, you see a chart of how slow it took 15 years to reach to 10%, and then 1 more year and a half.
And this was just a ticket. Yeah, and now we talk, we move away the whole airline organization, put everything customer-centric. I will retire in about 14 years, you know, according to German law. No, not even, okay, different question. When I retire, will it be done?
And let's say offer and orders transition?
Yeah.
Well, first, not sure for all airlines. For the big ones, yes, it will be done. And
So,
for the big ones, I think they will transition to full 100% NDC, zero artifact, in a matter of 3 to 5 years.
like Finnair announced it, where IAG is going, Air France KLM had an announcement 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We are still waiting for a Lufthansa announcement, but that's only for the big European airline groups. Steffi, what's your thought? You need more time till retirement than I do, so.
I would assume it's happening somewhere 2030, sometime then. It's always easier for bigger airlines to change the system than for small airlines. They need
But
to.
why?
They need to follow past everybody. If you change a system, somebody has to pay for it. So you pay if there is a big volume in the market. That's the truth. So, but somebody has to pay the bill. There's no free lunch. So, but I think, to be honest, 1 hour is a real revolution in that whole process, because there's a lot of cost savings for airlines on your servicing, on your back office processes. That's really the best of that concept.
So economies of scale count. Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that if you look at offer, order, settle, deliver, which is the name that everybody's kind of giving to this, offer and order are pretty well understood. Settle is getting more understood. It's the delivery part that concerns me. And if everything runs smoothly in the process, then it's fine. But if there are disruptions, then that's where the issue becomes. And it's not dealing with just the product that the airline sells. It's now all these other systems downstream. That's, I think, I agree with Jorge, is that, I think we're 3 to 5 years from major airlines looking at this, but it's that delivery aspect. And in the end, that's probably going to be the most important part, because if airlines don't deliver, then it can create customer issues.
Yeah, and about the delivery aspect, I think that's another subject for another discussion, because delivery of the services you buy as a passenger takes place in the aircraft, obviously, because you fly from A to B. That's fine. That's something the airline should have under control. But it also takes place at the airport. And then we enter a completely new subject where the airport and the airlines are not necessarily always best friends, where they fight about who owns the passenger during the airport experience. Is it an airport passenger? Is it an airline passenger? Some airlines have solved it together with an airport in a quite clever way, like Lufthansa, for instance, at T2 in Munich, where they decided to operate it as a joint venture, or British Airways with T5 in Heathrow, at Heathrow. But there is still lots of work to do to actually bring the grip on the street, to have all these wonderful offered, ordered services properly delivered in a good customer experience at the airport. And I agree, that's also what I see as one of the biggest hurdles in the upcoming future. With this and with 20 seconds left to go, does any one of you have a question which shall not exceed 7 seconds? No more questions? Then thank you so much for participating here, but also big thank you to my fellow panelists. Always great speaking to you, and I really hope that these things materialize as we just discussed them. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Boris Padovan, Stefanie Wasserfuhr, Jorge Diaz, and Brian Wyszynski. Thank you so much.